of ICSC events. The one thing as far as setting realistic goals is go in prepared. Make sure that you not only go there just to meet every every retailer, every broker, every developer active in your area. Look at it as an educational opportunity as well. Making the connection is the key. I met with a gentleman from the Southeast. I believe he was from Georgia in Recon. I met with him the first day of the 3-day event, and he pounded his fist on the table and said, I'm out here, was sent by my council to get a Starbucks in my community. And he was just adamant. He said, I am a type A personality. I'm out here to get it done. Well, I can tell you, I never saw him again. I tried to manage his expectations, but he was bound and determined he was going to take a Starbucks back to his community, a deal. And it just doesn't happen that way. So moving deals forward, making introductions, making contacts is really the key. What you want to do is just be prepared and make sure that you're there to learn as much as you can, but really to introduce yourself and your community to these active brokers, retailers, and developers.
Great. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but for the attendees that are joining us today, there is a questions box on the right panel of the GoToWebinar screen. As we go through this, feel free to jump in and ask questions, and I'll certainly throw those questions over to Kelly, and we'll try to answer those real time, and then we'll have some time at the end for some questions if anybody wants to throw anything in at the end. So feel free to do that as we go. The second point that we have highlighted is preparation. So certainly know your market. And this kind of points to what you were saying about the guy coming in for a Starbucks, Kelly. It's so important to know your community's demographic profile, your retail trade area, and the demographics within that retail trade area, who primary retailers are that are already in the community, and then where new retailers could go. So primary vacancies, planned developments, and be able to talk about not only your community profile, but if you do get the year of a retailer, what it would look like for them to come there. So do we have sites available? Do we have incentives available? And be able to really sell your community in 3 minutes or less, right? So taking advantage of those opportunities by knowing about your community. And I guess, Kelly, the question I would have there is, what do people seem to not have prepared the most when they go to these events? What's kind of the one or two things they should have that a lot of people don't, that would be really good to get that invest in and have before you head out to these events?
Well, to me, and again, I started the Retail Coach a little over 18 years ago. And when I started the Retail Coach, retail was not considered economic development. I mean, you fast forward to where we are today, and at these ICSC events, you see municipalities represented really from all over. So, one of the good things is now communities, municipalities understand that retail is maybe not driving their economic development strategy, but is a key component of it. So, they're much more active in the recruitment of retail and retail development. What we see is, and again, I'm going by conversations that I've had with national retailers who we have regular conversations with about recruitment, is because municipalities are involved in retail recruitment, they think that someone will fit their community, but they don't really know why. And a lot of the things that we hear from the retailers is these communities are wasting our time because they'll call us and see if we're interested, but they have no idea what their retail trade area is, how far consumers are driving in to shop. They have no awareness of what available properties are in their market. So, at the Retail Coach, we try to get from A to Z as quickly as possible. And that's by having these things that Austin is listed here. You've got to have a full understanding of the offerings in your community. I mentioned I mentioned about the optimism of our economy, consumer confidence being up, but at the end of the day, these retailers are looking for the sure thing. And you've got to convince them that your market is the sure thing. You have to have a full understanding of all of these things that are listed, because you only have one shot many times at these retailers. So within a short amount of time, you've got to be able to show them that there is an opportunity and that you're interested in having them in the marketplace.
Great. And that kind of leads us into marketing materials. So not only being able to communicate who you are as a community and what opportunities exist, but being able to have some materials that you can show them and highlight the opportunities and then leave behind with them as well. So they have something to look at and consider when they go home. And we always encourage people to have an iPad or a personal binder of their market information. Sometimes that's even just a vanilla file folder that's got, some printed out handouts of your retail trade area and some of the opportunities that are there. And the things that we typically tell people to have are a location map. And Kelly, as a former site selector, I know for some people they're like, wait, well, people know where our community is, or we can tell them, but how important is it to have something as basic as just a location map with, hey, here's where we are and here's the region we're in and the surrounding communities?
Well, we can all say that the mistakes we've made in the past are when we start assuming things. And you cannot assume that, if you're sitting across from a retail site selector for a national chain, that they know where your community is. I mean, it's just, Austin touched on it. I worked a number of years for a national retail chain in their corporate office doing site selection across the country. So I'm kind of coming at this presentation and in my view of ICSC events from both, a retail recruiter for municipalities under the retail coach, but also come at it from the retail side too. What do they need to see from you in order to move something forward? So, it's really key to make it simple. Anticipate what these retailers, developers, and brokers are looking for, and then provide it. And, again, I for many years, I was at ICSC events as a retail site selector. So I had municipalities coming to me, I had brokers coming to me, and I had developers coming to me. And they inevitably would come with reams of information that there's no way I could take home with me. So understand those 5 or 6 things that retailers really need, have that at your fingertips, and as Austin mentioned, have a binder that you can walk them through your community really quick. Have an iPad, but don't expect them to take home a lot of information, because they're not going to do it. It will end up in the trash. Trust me, that's the way it works. They can't take home 10 pounds of marketing collateral on 50 communities. So have these things, have a full understanding of them when you're selling your community, and it will be of a benefit to you.
I think the key there is just be as effective as possible with as little information as possible. So direct, here's our retail trade area, here's the opportunity. One of the things we certainly encourage and that we do for a lot of communities is retail gap analysis, right, Kelly? So right. Here's our community. Here are the gaps that we have and the retail opportunity we have. We'd love to have you consider us and just make it as easy as possible for those either retailers or brokers or site selectors to look at that and say, okay, this either fits or it doesn't.
Well, and one thing that you need to fully grasp is that retailers are looking at communities and looking at sites, not from community population, but they're looking at the retail trade area population. How far will your community pull consumers outside of your city boundaries? So sell your community, sell your municipality, sell your retail sites as a retail trade area and not a community population. It makes a big difference.
Definitely. So this is just an example of kind of how we package material, and we encourage taking an iPad or something that you can quickly pull up information on show somebody in a conversation, the more that you have readily available, and that's easy to see and understand, the more success you're going to have, just because you're going to be able to have better conversations and really kind of sell your community to people with visuals and with that data ready to go.
And I will echo one other comment, Austin, is, have information, understand your trade area, understand its demographic profile. As you mentioned, understand the gaps or the leakage in your community, but then have sites available, just like this graphic shows, of where you can put that retailer. It's not enough in 2017 to say, we would love for you to be in, Sandy Springs, Georgia. We have to show where we would put you, if it be in a strip center or if there'd be a vacant lot that you could purchase. So again, be thinking of what these retailers, brokers, and developers need, and then have that at your fingertips. That way you can move a deal forward quicker.
Great. Marketing materials continued. One-page community marketing flyer. We put together one-page, essentially infographic pieces for communities that we work with, just to make it, again, as simple as possible, to give someone one piece of paper, super light, and just give them the essentials on your community. So, Kelly, one of the questions that we've gotten since being on this webinar is someone asked, where do we start? And I think that's a great place to start, right? Figure out how to get the important information of your community onto one page and highlight your retail trade area and your opportunities, and kind of start there if this is something that you're new to.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have nothing other than the things described in these bullets, then have them. That way, you can have an intelligent conversation with those at the events.
And some of this information sounds basic or simple or kind of like common sense, but even something as simple as having the appropriate contact information on that sheet is very important. Kelly, I know you've seen a few times where somebody's interested in a community and they don't have the contact information for who they need to, and they'll go to the wrong place, or they'll maybe talk to the chamber instead of the economic development coordinator, and kind of get some wires crossed. So really simple things, but just make sure that you're making it as easy as possible for people to see the opportunity in your community, and then to get in touch with you about that if they're interested.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. It sounds simple, but we always stress, have one point of contact in your community for retail recruitment and retail development, if that be at the municipality level, economic development organization, or chamber. But you need to have all of those organizations aware of who the contact is, so any inquiries are funneled to the appropriate person that is accountable for it.
Right. And those don't have to be extravagant. Those don't have to have millions of pieces of information on it. What we typically encourage people to do is have a photo of your community, have a location map, like we said, help people understand where you are, what that opportunity is, and then include those demographics, traffic counts, just common knowledge that they would need to know to make sure that they can profile your community the right way. So, Kelly, one of the things that we talk about is having a strategy for these events and really knowing your approach. And a lot of people don't think about the kind of condensed time frame at regional events. And so a lot of these regional events may only be one day or 1.5 or 2 days. And so it's really important to structure your days to make the most connections possible with retailers, developers, brokers, and really target the retailers that you're looking for to come to your community. How would you encourage someone to approach that strategy?
Well, you have to be incredibly strategic about it, and don't go there without a plan and without an approach. The second bullet listed here is target and meet with retailers that fit your community. Again, I mentioned our conversations that we have with retailers, and quite honestly, some of the concerns they have is that they get calls from municipalities inquiring if would be interested in putting a store there, and they don't fit the municipality at all. It could be that a community of 5,000 is calling for a super target to locate there without them fully understanding the requirements of a super target. So what's happening is a lot of these site selectors are getting somewhat annoyed because the municipalities aren't fully understanding what the retailers are looking for before they give them a call. So, fully research, understand what the retailers are looking for, the ones that fit your community. That is really, really becoming important because post recession 2008 to 2010, these corporate site selection departments have been pared down from maybe 6 to 4 or 4 to 2. So they're asked to do more and more and more. And the way you help them before you reach out to them for a meeting is you fully understand what their requirements are and make sure that it is a fit for your community.
Great. Inviting retailers to community. I think part of the follow-up on that is, so you've met with a targeted retailer, they say, hey, we're interested in your community, you fit our profile. Invite them to your community. So try to get them to come to the community. A lot of times that may be retail brokers, and they're often gatekeepers for retailers, but do what you can to not only pique their interest at the event, but to follow up and to get those people into your community so they can see and kind of experience that opportunity. Kelly, you may want to talk more in depth about this, but I know a lot of our retail successes and how we get retailers to clients, a lot of those conversations start at some of these events, and it's the conversation there and then the follow-up plan of getting them to the community and visiting a site that really kind of lands that deal.
Yeah, it all starts with, I think, our first introductory slide in discussing about networking is, manage your expectations, but go there wanting to introduce yourself to everyone, every retailer, every broker that's active in your area, and also real estate developers. They're vital to communities in 2017. So make sure that you go there prepared and that your expectations are in line. We're big believers that you just don't get off of an airplane, Uber over to the event, and you're going to go in there and be successful. What you've got to do is plan in advance, target the retailers that you want to meet with, and set those meetings up in advance, well in advance of the event. And don't get your feelings hurt. If a retailer will not meet with you, just tell them that you would like to drop by, introduce yourself, and that's the way the relationship starts. Take their card, follow up, and move things forward.
Hey Kelly, we got a question from one of our attendees that said, I hear you guys saying target and meet retailers that fit your community. How do we go about doing that? I don't hear much in the way of how exactly to do that. So how would you tell somebody to approach figuring out how to target those retailers that fit their community profile?
Mm-hmm. Retailers have something, and when I say retailers, I'm also talking about restaurants. They have something called site selection criteria or location criteria. They have to have a set amount of people in that retail trade area. They need to meet the ethnicity requirements of their brand. There has to be a certain level of disposable income in the market. There may be a targeted age, median age in the market that they need to reach. So you need to fully understand what their location criteria is and to see that it's a close match to your community. That's the targeted approach that is the most beneficial. We've been doing this a long time, so we have a really strong feel for, what retailer will make it where. But, if someone is not as involved in retail recruitment, it all starts with fully understanding what the retailer's requirements are. Each retailer understands what their typical customer profile is. So what they're ultimately going to do at the end of the day is they're going to try to fit their customer profile to your market, and it either fits or it doesn't. So what you have to do as a leader of your community before you start any level of recruitment effort is fully understand who you are, the retail trade area, ethnicity, incomes, those type things, and then find the retailers who fit that.
And so when the kind of the how to do that is we break it down kind of into internal and external, right? So internal, know who you are, know your community, retail trade area, demographics, psychographics, everything you can about your community. The external being the retailer's expectations and their profiles. You can find those a lot of places. Kelly, you can probably list off more resources than I can, but most retailers at these events will have their profiles, so they'll readily give you that information. A lot of them have it on their development websites, so they list that out. And then there are a couple of other different resources where you can look online to find what a retailer looks for in a community. And so that those are kind of the two areas we look at: knowing your community and how to position yourself, and then what those retailers expect. And so that's where you can find that information. So it typically comes directly from either the site selection group or brokers that are looking for those sites, or the retailers directly.
There's one resource that's available. It's called Retail Lease Track. Retail, new word, lease, new word, track. And it has some of the more general location requirements. But you know, we tend every now and then to go on the website to find out if any of the location requirements have changed. So that's a good resource, and you know, we could direct you in a direction if you're having trouble with that.
Right. And so we'll have some contact information at the end. So if you have specific questions about some retailers, we have a lot of those profiles as well. So we can pass that information to you and help you with that. So targeting, we just talked about it, but really go in with the mindset of knowing what's realistic for your community. And even if you say, hey, we have a couple of stretch goals, just go into it knowing what they look for, how you can position your community, and then sites that you think might make sense to go and get those retailers and bring them into your community.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind, depending on the size of your community, bring in those retailers that are not represented there, or the uses of the retailers not represented there. I mean, if you have a relatively small retail trade area and you have a Home Depot operating, don't spend your time going after Lowe's, because all you're going to do is split those sales, you know, in half. Go after someone that is selling the goods and services are not currently represented in your market.
Right. So here's a great example of a minimum standard for all sites for In-N-Out Burger and how they profile that. So as far as retailers go, we know there's a broad spectrum of retailers and restaurants that all have different criterias, but this is just an example of In-N-Out and what they look for when they go into communities throughout the country and as they expand from California to really all over the United States. It's something that's often Kelly, you probably had a great point. One thing I want to mention before you get in there is something that's often overlooked is just kind of understanding where that retailer is and what they're doing. And so knowing where their closest units are to your community can help you position to them, hey, you don't have anything within 12 miles of us. We would be a great place to come and fill in the market because we're kind of filling a gap that you don't have filled right now.
Right. And you know, that seems like basic information, but it is so helpful to the retailer. Is what you're trying to show is that they're not currently covering your market. You know, as Austin's example said, they're 12 miles away. So if you can show graphically a map and show where their closest units are by distance and drive time. That's an advantage for you. We a number of years ago, we were successful with this really basic graphic to assist a community outside of Dallas to land a super target. That we were able to show them, they were looking at a couple of different communities, and we were able to show them where their closest units are by distance and drive time. And that was very, very important to them making the decision to go into our client community. And again, let's never assume anything. Let's never assume that they have that at their fingertips. Again, what you're trying to do is separate your community from other communities.
Right. And in terms of finding those retailers that will be at that conference, they typically have attendee and exhibitor lists on the ICSC website. So you can go in a week or even a few days beforehand and say, okay, what are the retailers going to be at this event? What brokers? Who am I talking to? Who is my audience? And that should help you prepare in terms of trying to figure out what marketing materials to take, what data to have available. And we certainly do that with all the events we go to. Is we try to look at least a week out and say, okay, who's going to be here that we need to kind of cater our messaging to. Elevator pitches are so important. We see so many community leaders that don't know how to pitch their community to someone. And Kelly, I know that you help teach communities how to do this, but how important is it from the site selection perspective that when someone comes and approaches you about a site, that they can quickly and succinctly tell you about their community and kind of hit the high points?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing more than hitting the high points. You've got to understand what the hot buttons are for these retailers, and you need to be able to quickly educate them on retail trade area, maybe competing brands in the market, who your primary retailers are in the market, and those types of things. So you've got to fully understand your market, and we've said that a few times, and you've got to be able to educate someone really quickly. And again, prepare on the upfront before you go to these events.
And this is a great example of how a community can approach that. It's not overly complicated. It's just a quick way of letting someone know, here's what our market looks like. Here's some of the retailers that have already invested in our market and that are actually in the community and that are making money. And then here's what we're looking for. We're looking for a sit-down restaurant like a Chili's. Your closest unit isn't close enough that it would cannibalize sales. We feel like there's an opportunity. Can we meet with you? And that's a really great way to position it, because you're getting everything you need to out there in a few minutes or less, and they either will identify with that or won't.
Yeah, and retail economic development is so unique to our traditional economic development. They're not looking at your school system. They're not looking at your quality of life. They want to know if they make an investment in your community that it's safe and secure, and they're going to make money. That's the bottom line. That's where you're trying to educate them on the opportunities in your community so they can do that.
Right. And at the sake of sounding redundant, again, just have in mind a hit list of brokers who may represent certain retailers. We see more and more that retailers are starting to outsource some of their site selection activity. Kelly mentioned this earlier, that some teams are getting a little bit smaller and people don't have as many resources as they used to. So be aware of brokers, certainly in the region and nationally, that do some of that site selection work for retailers, so you can pinpoint who they are and find them at these events as well.
And I will say this from a recruitment standpoint: always start at the retailer level. Make them tell you that they've got a broker that they're working with. And where we see this most often is in larger metro areas, where you may have a brokerage firm that is as we said in a previous screen, the gatekeeper for them. They're the ones that will take this information and determine if there is an opportunity, and if there is, They will get to your market, possibly schedule a meeting with someone who controls a site that they're interested in.
Definitely. The most productive time to meet with retailers and brokers at some of these events is typically early in the morning. So as soon as if you have a conference hall or you've got, we were at a retail live conference here in Austin, Texas, a few weeks ago. As soon as the hall opens, try to get to people as early as possible before they get stacked up and have tens or hundreds of conversations. And then often at the end of the afternoon or the end of the day, is a good time to catch people as they're kind of wrapping up or things have died down a little bit, just so you can get a little bit more of their attention, either before things get crazy or after, and they can kind of settle down and pay attention to you.
You know, we're firm believers in that you have to plan ahead and set meetings up prior to the events. This screen is about those retailers, those brokers, those developers who you were not able to set a meeting with.
Right. And then one of the most important things is the post conference follow up. It is absolutely critical to follow up. A lot of times you'll have a great conversation with a retailer or a broker, and you can't assume that they'll go off and do their part without following up. So make sure that you're going to follow up with them. Try to schedule a follow up visit to the community or a phone call, whatever that looks like for the next step. But that can be something as easy as a short email thanking them for their time, or if you had a great conversation and they want more information, make sure that you're getting that to them in a timely fashion. So send them an email with some site plans or anything they need to make that next step easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relationship business, and those who understand that are the ones that seem to excel at it. And just establishing that relationship, nurturing that relationship, moving it forward, and providing that information in a super timely fashion while it's still on their mind is absolutely key.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be an immediate outcome from that, or that they're going to come to the community within a couple of weeks. We always say it's a process, not an event, and so you've got to do your part to nurture that process and make sure that you're not only following up, but continuing to build that relationship and keep that process going over the following weeks and months. And, you know, we've seen retailers say, I love your community. We want to be there, but we probably won't be there for 6 to 12 to 18 months. And we've certainly seen conversations that have taken a year that ultimately ended up in success. And so understanding the process and then just doing whatever you can to expedite that process or just keep that process going. And I think something that's important is be persistent, but not pesky. There's a fine line between being helpful and then being burdensome. So, Kelly, I know you've probably seen that play out many times in your career, but you don't want to become an annoyance or a pest. You want to make sure that you're being helpful, but not overly helpful or doing too much.
Right. And I will say this from a retailer standpoint, they're going to tell you if there's a level of interest or not. And you know, and if they say it's 6 months off, it's 12 months off, you know, you need to fully understand that. And that doesn't mean that you don't follow up with them every few months, but don't follow up with them every week, every 2 weeks. It's not going to move things forward. I promise you that. They're going to do it on their time frame and not on your time frame, but you just need to keep on their radar screen. And again, there is a fine line between persistence and being pesky, and you've just got to walk that line.
So we're going to open up to some questions here. Kelly, I'll keep you on for a few minutes and we'll work through some questions. If you have questions or you'd like to talk to Kelly about how he would prepare or anything that we can do to help you prepare for these events, send us an email at info@theretailcoach.net and we'll get that to Kelly and then he'll follow up with you. You can call our office as well. We've got a number of people that can help you get data or marketing materials prepared. Kelly, the first question that we have is, We've never been to one of these events before. It seems a little bit overwhelming to try to prepare and do all these things. What would be the actual starting point for us? We don't really know our retail trade area. We haven't really sold our community well in the past. You mentioned retail gap analysis. We don't have those things. How should we start?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we tell our clients to start small, start at the state events, start at the regional events, is because your investment in going to those is less than certainly recon that would probably cost $5,000 just to work it at a very minimal level. Um, you know, if you've never been, go get a level of education and understanding of how the business works. We've kind of given you the introduction into it, uh, but have an understanding of some of those things that we spoke about. And you don't have to make an investment to to get a lot of those things, but go as prepared as you can be to fully understand, what your community will support, and go to those retailers that you feel like would fill that gap, would fill that opportunity, and have an understanding. Go to talk to some of your local businesses and ask them, how far are your customers driving in to shop? Try to get a full understanding of that trade area is really, really important. We say that that's really the foundation of any retail strategy, is fully understanding your retail trade area. And that's really important. We use cellular phone technology to do that. So if you have a retailer or you have a downtown district, we can build a geofence around those stores or those districts, and we can tell where the customers are coming from. We can tell where the people who frequent those stores are coming from. But doing that, and maybe interviewing your retailers, going in with a level of understanding of your retail trade area, is probably the most elementary, the most fundamental step that you could take toward some level of retail recruitment.
Great. Um, Another question. We've never gone to ICSC events, but we're very interested in getting new retailers. Should we consider membership to a group like ICSC or ICSC?
The 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 last I checked, a municipal membership was $100, maybe $125, and I can tell you your access to educational materials on their website is worth much, much more than that. I would say if you're not a member, please consider budgeting for it next year. The the education alone is worth the membership fee. That's over and above you taking the next step of going to one of these events. But it's very, very important. If you're in the retail recruitment business in your community, you need to be a member of ICSC.
Great. And I think you mentioned the resources and the networking are definitely worth it. There's an additional cost for events and going and doing things, which leads into our next question. But I certainly think the membership is worth it. Um, we have a limited budget, some limited resources. We've gone to the big ICSE Recon conference in Las Vegas the past few years and haven't really had much success. Should we keep doing that, or should we try to go to some of the more local regional events that we haven't been going to?
Well, I think and I'd love to have a conversation with you if need be, but I would like to know a little bit more as to why you think it's not working. How strategic have you been in attending Recon in Las Vegas? Recon is totally different than these regional events. You've got 40,000 people there. You've got to start setting up your meetings 90 to 120 days in advance. It is, in my opinion, a waste of money if you go there without those meetings, just because there's so many people wanting 5 to 10 minutes of these retailers, developers, and brokers' attention that you are at a disadvantage. So I'd love to find out why you think it's not working, but if it's not working there, as I said earlier, the retailers, brokers, and developers who are attending these regional events are the ones doing deals in your area. So you may want to start there, or take a step back and go there.
Right. And one of the things we've done is, we have client communities that have said the same thing. And we've actually built a booth that allows us to kind of share space with some of our clients. And what they do is they can invest a lot less in coming out to Recon in Vegas, and they can be in a booth space with us where we're having hundreds of meetings with retailers and brokers and site selectors. And so there are things like that that are options as well, where you could invest less in going to Recon, but still have a presence and still have a meaningful space there to have meetings and do those kinds of things.
Right.
Kelly, you mentioned the cell phone analysis. Someone asked, we have a drive time trade area. Is the cell phone trade area more effective? Should we update ours? Is this something retailers are looking at, or that is more accurate?
Well, retailers want to know the most accurate retail trade area they can get. And the cell phone analysis is built around if someone is in a business and their user cell phone for, making a call, receiving a call, sending a text, receiving a text, sending an email, receiving an email, this technology can determine where that person actually lives in the evening, where they reside in the evening. So it is highly accurate. And what we do is, once we get that information, we go in and we basically hand draw a retail trade area around where those people reside, where the highest density of those users reside. So it's much more accurate than a computer model. And again, it removes a lot of risk from the decision of a retailer to locate in a community or not.
Great. And we've seen that be a difference maker for certain retailers, where you can point to legitimate data that says we know exactly who's in our community and we know where people are coming from, because that's a huge piece of data that retailers love to have. A drive time and even some hand drawn trade areas can be
right.
estimates. And so it's good to have locational data that says, we know these people are actually in the community. And sometimes when you do that, if you live in a small community, you often kind of undersell your trade area. And when you start to look at, okay, who's actually coming into our community, sometimes those trade areas get a lot larger than you would expect. Certainly if you have some regional thoroughfares or traffic patterns kind of come through your community, it's really interesting to see how much larger that actual retail trade area is than some estimates for drive times.
That's a good point. Very good point.
All right. Well, we're running up against 11 o'clock, so I think we'll end here. If you have any other questions, like I said, please email us at info@theretailcoach.net or give us a call. We'll be more than happy to help you prepare or think about or find opportunities at these regional events. Kelly, thank you so much for your time today. And is there anything that you want to leave with our attendees?
Yeah, I think the takeaway would be, the more prepared you can be on the upfront, the more successful you will be on the back end. So take the time to prepare for these events, and be a little bit strategic about who you want to visit with, and take the time to set meetings, and the benefits will be much greater if you, again, make the investment on the upfront. But Austin, I appreciate it, and to those attending, we certainly do appreciate it. And we're a phone call away, we're an email away, and any questions you have going forward concerning ICSC events or anything pertaining to to what we spoke about, again, give us a call.
Great. Well, thank you so much for attending. We'll be sending out an email with a recording of this webinar and then the slides as well. So we'll be getting those to you and following up. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Austin. Bye.
Thanks.